I like making people think and laugh and feel like they've continued, to understand this thing called music a little bit more each time that they come to see me. And each time that they come to see me, the next time I get to see a little bit more about this thing called music from them as well.
Hello and welcome to the Beautiful Work Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Krikorian. Each episode, we feature a special guest from all walks of life, and we ask them to explore the ins and outs, the ups and downs, the triumphs and the trials of their chosen field. Writers, musicians, coaches, business owners, athletes, and everything in between. We peel back the curtain to hear their stories, to walk their paths, to find out how they breathe life into their beautiful work. Today, we're excited to welcome professional guitarist and owner and operator of Superpowers Music Academy, Bob Boulding. Bob is here today to discuss the elements of songwriting, the role of art and an artist during a pandemic and social unrest, starting and running a successful business, how to teach and learn music, and what famous bands he'd love to have played in. So now, we begin the podcast with our conversation about the writing and recording of Bob's newest single, Time Out of Mind. I hope you enjoy the show.
One of the reasons that I actually finished that record and put it out is because it finally came naturally to me after years and years and years. Even before the Young Dubliners, I was in the Cram Brothers band. I was professionally employed as a musician all those years, always trying to write my own stuff. And, a lot of my things in the 90s sounded influenced from that era. So some of it is fairly embarrassing to me now, but just, if anything, it's a little wacky, like it might have some of my, things I was impressed with back then, such as Frank Zappa music or Nirvana type stuff,
Yeah.
So some of it can be a little bit obtuse, but, as time went on, and both working with the Dubs and also doing session work with like the likes of yourself, working around other artists, I started to see their process. And so, in fact, Dan, there was something that I took away from my time with you, watching your process, was that, early on, as you really started to grow your craft, you showed me how, you would capture your ideas on Post-it notes a lot. And I thought,
right.
Okay, well, so what I had in my car is an iPhone with, a voice memo feature. And there was one year I was doing a lot of activity, even though I lived in LA, I was 3 times a week driving to Orange County. And there was, as you know, a lot of time in traffic.
Yeah.
So whatever year that was, 2015, I listened to a couple of records that kind of got these earworms in my head that were reprocessing themselves and synthesizing themselves into its own original song, and so melodically I had all these ideas, and then once I started getting the melody, usually I'm always finding that the melody and the lyric comes at the same time. What really starts a song off for me is one phrase that, in that phrase, I've got words, I have melody, I have rhythm, and because of all the production I've been involved with, I can hear the whole enchilada. I can hear what the guitars are going to do, if there's guitars, the rhythm section, layers of vocals or other timbres. And so I wrote that song basically commuting to the OC 3 days a week. I would get another snippet of lyric in my head and spit it into the phone. And, after whatever 5, 10 days of that, I had a song.
Thanks for the reference to the post-it notes. I was laughing because as you're talking about it, I'm looking at my desk right now, and I've got all. I mean, I've got them nicely in a pile, but I still do. My post-it notes are still everywhere.
Yeah, man.
And it's like the voice memo thing that you just mentioned, where sometimes like a big like white piece of paper, like I also have like notebook stuff. It's more daunting because your brain feels like it needs to fill it or something with a great song or have all the lyrics.
Yeah.
But a post-it note is less daunting, or a voice memo is just like I can just write it down, get it off my mind, and then it kind of stays there and I can come back to it a little bit easier. And so it's interesting, your voice memo thing too, because I've hundreds of voice memos as well, where you're just driving and you just open it for a second and then you can come back to it, and it helps with the process for sure. I love that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's great when you're driving because it's easy, you can even voice prompt it, wink, wink, so you're not taking your eyes off the wheel or hands off the road.
Absolutely.
And,
yes.
Yeah. But, it can be a slippery slope too, depending on your tolerance during traffic. You might wind up some really angry punk songs.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And some G.G. Allen type, just stream of consciousness. Anyway.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
So Time Out of Mind, a song you released a few years ago, and what I'm interested in finding more about you is because you and I have worked together on 4 of my records, and we will in the future as well, new stuff I got coming out. And I really enjoy working with you in that studio setting because I think one of your best characteristics as a professional musician is you have the chops to play, basically anything you want, whether it's jazz or blues or rock or pop, in a very short amount of time. But your openness to ideas and your openness to explore avenues where I've enjoyed working with you because it's like whatever I want on the song, you're always going back to, well, how does this sound? How does this work? What's this backdrop like? And it's really easy to work with you because 1, you're just an amazing player, but 2, you're easy to work with. But then I'm interested now as you develop into your own artist, your own putting out your own material. Are you the same kind of way as a solo artist when you're writing songs and working on your own stuff as you are as a professional studio musician, where you're very open and bring stuff to the table, or are you like more focused with your own work and you know what you want and you stick to that?
Yeah, well, thanks for the kudos. My gut instinct is I kind of, how I said a few minutes ago, I hear the big picture, with those instant ideas. And so I feel like I stick to the ideas, the concept that I have for the song early on, as far as the whole record goes. During the writing process, that's where you were thinking, okay, well, what feels good? And I feel you need to be open at that point to, okay, well, these lyrics kind of made sense the other day. Now I think there's a better direction for these, or melodically or rhythmically. So I think during the writing process, that's discovery. But as far as me producing my own recordings, and I kind of feel like I've got an idea pretty early on what it's going to sound like in the end. And,
sure.
I'm glad you bring that up because I think that's worth revisiting. I mean, sometimes you might. I mean, there is a value in making a decision and not spending too much time deciding or experimenting. It depends on just what your situation is, I suppose, perhaps.
Sure.
But there's a value in deciding, but at the same time, I could see an equal value in trying to exercise that muscle of being open and trying to, as the production process goes, keeping it open to almost something akin to live performance where, okay, we're in the moment. I might be influenced by something today or this hour that could be useful, you know.
Last time we talked and you were on the podcast, you were just pretty recently transferring over from being with the Young Dubliners and then to starting your own business, Superpower Music Academy. 2 years later now, how is that transition still going? Do you feel more comfortable where you're at now or less comfortable, or, you know, with the COVID situation, nobody's quite comfortable. But how has that been since we talked 2 years ago when it was more fresh, when you had just left?
It's really encouraging. I really like it. I really like it, you know. As you might imagine, at first, the transition was awkward and, you know, it felt a little weird, you know, to not go and play shows on a regular basis anymore. But at the same time, it really kind of spoke to me on a couple of levels. I mean, there is that if anybody's changed their career or occupation, they know what it feels like to take a fresh risk again and just get the feel of something that is different from what you're used to. And it's really exciting and invigorating. And it forced me to start to reach out socially in new ways that I hadn't really exercised for a long time.
Yeah.
It forced me to reach, you know, down inside in a new way that, you know, is similar to being a freelance musician or producing music, you know. But and I'm speaking about being an entrepreneur here, ultimately.
Sure. Yeah.
Because at first, you know, it was like, okay, I'm going to take my skills. I can play instruments. So I'm just going to show people how to do what I do, you know. But that of itself is a big learning curve because I wasn't great when I first started teaching, but, you know, I feel like I've gotten a lot better. And same thing with running a business in general is, you know, you start learning about your market, you start thinking about your brand, developing and tweaking that. And then, of course, then there's the nuts and bolts of the actual service provided. There's the administrative, and then the you know, people element. So without getting too much further out in the weeds, it's I've really kind of been growing into it, and it feels great, you know. It's not like being in bands, but it has a similar feeling as far as, you know, autonomy.
What are some of the skills, like particular skills you feel like you really had to hone in on the last couple of years and get better at? You mentioned a couple of things like finding your target demographic and learning about your business model and how you teach. But how about as like a musician yourself? Have you found that you've gotten better at certain aspects of, say, teaching the guitar than when you were just a player in a band? Are there things that have been like you've honed in on, or have you felt like maybe some things have slid back and other things have gotten better?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, that's actually a good way to put it is I would say, you know, to be fair, as a performer, I'm probably not as good as I was, you know, a couple of years ago. Although I still go and perform, I still go and record, work with others from time to time.
You and I did a show about a year ago. You came up and played. That was fun.
Are you kidding? That was amazing.
Back when we could play some live music together, that was fun. But
I felt like we were a cross between Iron and Wine and PSN up there or something. It was super cool, man.
That was fun.
Yeah.
So sorry, but you were saying though about some skills though have come to the forefront while others have gotten.
Yeah. As far as a player and a teacher goes, oh, for sure. I mean, every month I feel like I'm learning some new way of just getting people to recognize what their skills and talents are and what they can be. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like coaching in a way too. It's sort of like you just got to, you know, give them positivity and authentic positivity. And if there's a challenge involved, you got to find a way to show them how to make it productive. And I'll tell you what, patience is key in this service, that because everybody deserves it, and it's the only thing that's going to work is patience. So if somebody wants to, if they want to add that element of music into their life, or if they want to expand their talent further or what have you, then just coming back and consistency is key. And so I've been developing just how to instill that in people more readily and organically.
And your temperament, me knowing you personally, I think lends itself very well to being one-on-one and being patient and fostering people's confidence. I know you've certainly done that for me as an artist. I mean, I know it was always so cool when, Sean is the engineer, Sean Norris, that we work with. And, the first time he would play one of my songs back to you, you get to the studio, you sit down, okay, I'd hand you my notes with the chords and lyrics, and then you listen back. And I remember there was those times where the first listen back, you would just be like, wow, that's such a cool song. And then I can't wait to work on it. And it'd foster a lot of confidence in me, because, it's scary for an artist to come into a recording session and work with someone like yourself, and you're a little nervous about how your song's going to come across. And so I would imagine a similar sentiment for someone coming in that's trying to learn the guitar and showing them, hey, you can keep doing this. Can you describe, though, have you had some moments with some students where you see the light bulb go on, where you're working and all of a sudden they understand how to do the chord change, or they start to put the scales together, or whatever it is, and you can see them growing from a certain phase to another one?
Sure. Yeah. That's exciting. It's like, most of the time it's not obvious, though. It's sort of more just, over time, kind of part of my job is observing a person from week to week and assessing, okay, what do they seem, motivated to do? What song do they want to work on, or what piece do they want to work on, or what didn't work for them, or how frustrated they may be, or how, excited they may be, and I assess that from week to week. And so that usually provides the clues to, something showed up for them, It could have been a tactile element. It could have been a mental element, So, yeah, it definitely happens. And occasionally you do get the obvious, like going, oh, you're telling me if I just move the pick over here, it's like, well, that sounds different. It's like, yeah.
Right. What have you learned in the last couple of years about how people learn? About, when you have a student, like, what have you learned about just the learning process of music, being on the other side of it now? Because for so many years, you're just someone that was, learning yourself and honing and mastering your craft, and now you're on the other side of it and you're helping other people do it. What are some ways that you've seen to be most effective in helping, especially young kids, discover and learn instruments and want to keep doing it themselves?
That's a good question. Consistency and positivity and clarity.
Okay.
I think that is what works for people really well.
Yeah.
And with children, you learn that they do appreciate play, playfulness, that sort of a thing. They also appreciate not being talked to like a child, but rather they appreciate good vocabulary and as long as you're not pedantic. Um,
Uh-huh.
and of course, you have to learn how to present things in digestible chunks.
Yeah.
Like you probably couldn't use a sentence structure quite as big as you use with an adult with children, but the vocabulary most certainly you can.
Yeah.
And occasionally I've had like very young students. There's been once or twice where with the very young students, I teach Suzuki methods, so it's a team of myself, the student, and the parent. The parent is actually learning the instrument along with the student, and so that they may, foster a home lesson every day, and which the idea, is that's a good way to instill character in the child. And so there's been once or twice where the child, for whatever reason, 5-year-old, they weren't able to play the little passage, and they started crying, and those are great moments to be tender and show them, like, it's okay,
Yeah.
and we don't have to give up, but it's okay that we can't do it today, because like in the book I quoted to you in the last interview, Don Miguel Ruiz, the 4 agreements, is that do your best, but your best will change from day to day. And so that's a tenet that I find creeps into the practice quite a bit with instruction.
Do your best, but your best will change from day to day. In 2009, I was a young and inexperienced songwriter doing my best to try and write and produce my second album when I was introduced to Bob Boulding. At the time, Bob was still the lead guitarist for the Young Dubliners, and I was beyond excited and mostly nervous to work with him on my newest record. But the same patience and openness Bob shows his students was what he showed me in working long days and nights in the studio. And it gave me confidence working with him, allowed me to grow, and showed me how to work like a true professional. The last 10 months has tested our patience, both individually and collectively, and forced us to literally sit and wait, and trying to strike a balance between using this time for both self-reflection and forward momentum can feel like being stuck in neutral. But as Bob reflects, the wisdom is in bringing your best to the day, whatever it is. And as the old saying goes, a man who masters patience masters everything. What keeps kids coming back? Because you always hear the stories about the kid that took piano lessons as a kid and hated it every time the piano teacher came over and gave up music forever because it was not fun for them.
Yeah.
How do you make it fun for them, but also teach them what they need to know and want them to keep coming back?
I usually have like a cheese pizza and a pepperoni pizza, maybe like a pitcher of some Coke. No.
Yeah, that'll do it.
It's treats, right? You got to have, yeah.
Yes. But do you teach them, I guess I'm digging in on the learning process. Like, do you start with scales and build from the scales of music, or do they come in and they want to learn some favorite pop song they heard of Justin Bieber, and you teach them how to play the Bieber song, and then you can go from there? Like,
yeah.
What's your process like with that?
Kind of more of the latter, but everybody's a little bit different. That's another part of the job is the assessment. Thinking, okay, what works for this person, and also what do they want to do? So, I think, what keeps them coming back is that they have an accomplishment, so that, I show them skills. Early on, it's not about reading. And this is across all ages, and even across all skill levels. If there's somebody who's more advanced or intermediate that comes to study with me, it's about skills, and we could get into technique a lot, or we can get into it just a little bit. And that's something I like to do, is just find ways to get people to develop technique, so that they're not thinking about it. They're just doing it,
Yeah.
Because at its core, music playing it's absolutely visceral, and at the same time it is so cerebral. It's just there's so many studies about how across all ages, but especially young brains, the development is significant, with math skills, spatial reasoning, emotional regulation. A lot of different areas of development benefit from playing music, even listening to music. If your instrument is the radio, that's still you're into music. So
Right.
And so, yeah, I try to keep it where there are, that there's something achieved every lesson, that it doesn't have to be even specific. It's like, okay, well, we spent some time together, and you spent some time being musical, and I try to find a way for them to take it away, so they can use it on their own.
Sure.
And, at the end of the lesson, I always will give them a recipe, 3 or 4 steps to follow every day. I think most music teachers do that. It's like, okay, here's your practice regimen and that kind of a thing. And
Sure.
try not to teach too many points in the lesson, or give them too many points to jog on during the week too. But,
Okay.
and even after the separation that we've been experiencing the last few months, then it kind of adds to my workload a bit, because then I'll have to jot those notes down at the end of the lesson, and then at the end of the day, I have to type it all up and email it out to them. So, but
And that kind of leads nicely to my next question about your business during the pandemic, and sort of
Yeah.
what you've had to do as a business owner to continue to keep pace while things are shut down, and also just how you've seen. Has there been an uptick in people wanting to learn instruments during this time because everybody's sitting at home with nothing to do, or where have things been from your end during this pandemic?
Yeah, gosh, it's I think people are starting to see the value in. They're getting used to living online, right? And so I've started to experience a bit more interest from some newbies out there and some general public.
Great.
Even also returning students too are saying, I'd like to come back in, So yeah, the interest is definitely there, and at first it was a pretty big slap in the face. I'd spent 2.5 years, working on this brand and on this space and on this method or methods. And as a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs can attest to, it's pretty slow going, especially a service business. Sometimes it takes a few years to get to where you're at parity.
Uh-huh.
And I was just starting to see some momentum when 2020 happened. And so a lot of that recognition I was starting to see in the community, as far as my marketing paying off and getting calls, that ceased pretty immediately. And also, I was starting to offer some other instruments. I had a few other teachers contracting with me. That's why I have this piano next to me here. So I was offering piano lessons and voice lessons, ukulele and violin, and I was starting to expand. And unfortunately, most of those students, they decided to park their lessons because most of them were the students were children, and trying to take a piano lesson online, like maybe a
Sure.
guitar lesson is easier. I don't want to say it can't be done because I do know a piano teacher in Orange County who is doing quite well. So I think it was just where I was at with my particular clients. They just weren't ready yet. I can only speak for myself.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's change a little bit of direction from just specifics of COVID and your business, and
Yeah.
I guess more of a theoretical question of the role of an artist during these times. You've been someone that's around creative people all the time, around art. You're always creating. You've been part of bands for all your life. But why do you think it's so important during national crisis and a world crisis with the pandemic and with currently with a lot of the social unrest in the United States? What's the
hmm
role of an artist during these times to try to make sense of what's happening in the world and put it into some sort of art form?
I would, I think being authentic and, being an authentic person who is entertaining people with content that means something in any way. Even if it's escapist, you know,
Yeah.
songs or protest songs, or if you're writing drama or comedy for television or film or literature, or any number or if you're a fine artist who's creating imagery. I think authenticity is key because and I know that's kind of vague sounding, but uh, people know when they hear it or they see it
Yeah.
or they read it that it's somebody who intends to create some entertainment or some information or some content that is quality and is attempting to actually touch other people, so that it's not a matter of an artist who's saying, look at me, but more like a popularity contest, but more like, look at me, I'm sharing this with you so that you can reflect on your own feelings around this piece of work. That's how I imagine the role.
As an artist, personally, how have you dealt with some of these things?
Well, besides the cases of red wine, I've been trying to just really, I've been trying to,
For sure.
yeah, I've been trying to, just trying to pay attention,
Yeah.
trying to learn from all these different angles that are happening, that are going around, watching what's happening in my community. Something I have to say is there's a lot that I need to keep growing about.
Sure. Yeah, I think right now, this time, gosh, we're all learning so much about what we don't know, and just being a good listener is so important. And I know as an artist, I've spoken to other creative friends of mine, and everybody's handling it a little differently. Some people are feeling like they need to post socially about things and kind of do it that way. Other people are writing. Other people are just, more in the comfort of their homes, having conversations. I don't know if there's a right or wrong way to do it. It's just more of a personal thing on how are you growing and learning through this time. But I think that, art has such a way of capturing moments and keeping them, bottled in time. It'll be interesting 5-10 years from now to look back
Yeah.
on the music and the art and the books and things that are written during this critical period in our society, and how we look back on it. And so it'll be really interesting.
It will be. It'll be very interesting. Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, that's something that music does, I think, for a lot of people, is it's a time machine, I mean, almost like smells. They say that olfactory smells, or the senses, the smells are something that can really just transport you in your mind to where vividly, you can really plug into a memory. And music does that a lot as well.
Absolutely.
So like, I was listening to an interview of Mickey Dolenz. He was the singer in the Monkees, the old TV show in the
Yeah.
60s. And, I'm the youngest of four kids by far. So when I was a wee lad, a little shrimp, like I remember, believe it or not, I kind of remember the Beatles still being together. That's how old I am. And also probably because I had older siblings that were coming home with the Let It Be album. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And so I'm listening to this interview of Mickey Dolenz, and that TV show, like one of my sisters used to watch those kind of programs. Hearing this guy talk, and then they would play snippets of the song, and I was like, wow, this is, I remember being 5 years old again, and I remember the color of the paint in the house or whatever. And then there's other songs that transport you to your adolescence and your college age, and then, what it's like to be in your 20s and after you've come of age, and then, as you become a more mature adult. And yeah, my gosh, everything going on right now will surely be, just like the Great Recession. That really wasn't that long ago.
Right.
Kind of was a long time ago. And so what's happening right now, there will be reverberations for a long time.
Yeah. I find myself as a writer trying to figure out my voice within this, because you have the raw human emotions of some fear and some anxiety about what your future looks like and your family, and trying to write about those things during this time has been interesting, to say the least. And I've actually written quite a bit, and I don't know how much of it will ever make its way onto an album. I'm sure some of it will, but I think just for me, the process of writing it has been helpful during this time, because music has a way of, you can like make sense of the world in a 4-minute song in a sense. So
it's a snapshot, like you say.
Absolutely. So
yeah, you are a writer. You're a writer's writer, you're a songwriter. So
appreciate that.
That's what you do, You're like akin to a jazz musician who they're an improviser, you're a songwriter. And so, yeah, and as they say, that's where you get the gems, you write and write and write, and there will be
something's there eventually. Yeah. Well, I want to maybe lighten it up for a second. We would do
yes,
and
please.
I have a few just kind of fun, quick questions for you before we dive back into some other stuff. But so these are just fun little questions. You don't have to explain too much if you don't want to. But
okay.
A 3-pack of questions for Bob Boulding. The first one is, if you could be like a famous athlete, what sport would you want to be a famous athlete in?
Like North Shore, Bonsai, Pipeline.
Surf.
OP Tour.
Okay.
Yeah, Rod Mercado level of, or dating myself, like a Shane Horan level of, like, just, killer thrusting, like, straight on surfer. Yeah.
You have the hair for it.
I get this overlight here, but that's always that sport has always fascinated me. And unfortunately, I was never a good swimmer. I'm not good enough to not drown, or really not good enough to stay out of the way of the guy or the people who knew what they were doing. So
did you hear I think they have that surf ranch up in is it Lenmore, California? Kelly Slater, they bought like yards, hundreds of yards of fields up there, and they've tried to develop the perfect wave so that you can go to this ranch and basically surf, and they can eventually have like tournaments there, crowds like you would in an arena, but it's at a surf ranch.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I'll have to send you some stuff after, because I think it's already up and running.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'd be really interested. God, Lenore, you're going to need a pretty thick wetsuit up there. I mean,
It's true.
yeah.
Yeah, so supposedly
Chilly.
it's something they've been working on with like physicists and scientists to try to create the perfect wave. And
Oh my God.
Kelly Slater has been able to do something, and so interesting in that front. But
That's cool. Yeah.
yeah,
'Cause that was one thing that always put me off. Like I would go paddling. I would go to the easier breaks and beaches and such because I was a novice. And
yeah,
I'd paddle out, and then all of a sudden I'm like, all right, good. I'm waiting for a set. And then there was this one beach down by the nuclear power plant, San Onofre,
uh-huh.
old man's, and I'm sitting there in the water, and then I'm 100 yards from the shore, and so you think like you're out in the ocean. All of a sudden, my foot brushes something, and there's a rocky reef 6 inches below
Oh,
my
jeez.
my deck, and I'm like, all right. So when I fall off the board, which I am going to do when I catch this wave, I'm going to crack my head wide open.
Right.
Great, So that sounds like the rant for me.
Yes, for sure. Well, good. Well, next question. You've for years been a guitarist in Young Dubliners and been a guitarist in multiple bands and play that instrument. But if you could go back in time and learn the craft of another instrument and be in a band playing some other instrument, which one would that be?
Wow, that's a really good question. Can I give like a two answer?
Sure. It's your answer.
I'll tell you what. I mean, I've always been fascinated by symphony, and I think to play a string instrument in a symphony, like not even first chair, second chair violin, or
Yeah.
even the viola, or or maybe even a woods instrument. Like believe it or not, I've always kind of like found the oboe to be kind of relaxing.
Uh-huh.
Something like that. So I think that'd be the most amazing experience to be
Yeah.
sitting in the middle of a philharmonic symphonic orchestra and experiencing that. Yeah, I couldn't imagine. And then on top of that, something or separate from that, not on top of, something from another country, like being part of a gamelan orchestra.
You have to explain that a little bit more for me. I'm not as up to on what that is.
Oh, gamelan, that comes from Indonesian area of the world. I want to say it's Bali is
Okay.
where it originated from. So I'm obviously not as knowledgeable about it as I could be. I'm just kind of going off of what have seen. But they play these drums that are tuned, and they're not large orchestras. They could be 12 to 18 people, I believe, something like that.
Uh-huh.
But they play tuned percussion polyrhythmically, and it becomes something that's very trance-inducing,
Okay.
because it's almost like an audio fractal. If you know what a fractal is, those like a kaleidoscope.
Oh,
sort
yeah.
of,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
visual. It's sort of like that, and there's a lot of different patterns that weave and overlay, and it turns out to be really exciting.
Okay.
Malian music has a similar approach too, because they have these long meters in music. We're in the West, we're so used to chunks of four and four time and everything, and a predictable pulse. And while in West African music or in music of Indochina, the music can have a pulse. The meter is much more intense and exotic.
Okay.
And, yeah, can really draw your mind into places.
That's cool. Those are two interesting answers outside of the, hey, I'd rather be the drummer or something like that, which would be definitely very cool too. But
Oh yeah,
for sure.
drums are number three.
Okay,
Who doesn't want to be a drummer, right?
that's true. I mean, yeah, the drummer, the lead singer, lead guitarist. I've always wanted to. I think because I've always been the front man, and it's always like I'm the one that has to sing and kind of carry that part of the show.
Yeah.
Sometimes I envy the bass player, and I've always thought I kind of would like to be in a band where I can, just lay the groove and be in the back and just really enjoying life, kind of not having to be out in front of things. And I think that's just part of like,
no,
that would be fun.
I was always jealous of bass players because they had so much less gear to carry. It's
That's
like
true.
I've got pedal board and speaker cabinet and head, and
That's
this
true.
cat comes in, he's got an amp, a cable, and his bass. That's it.
And he's plugged in, ready to go. Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're collecting the same I am? What?
Yep. But most people don't understand how incredibly important having a great bass player is for the
God.
band. I mean, it's everything.
Bass is amazing. I love teaching it. I love playing it. It's
Yeah.
like writing on it. I've always called it slow motion lead guitar, being
That's good.
guitarist first.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very cathartic, and it's fantastic.
Awesome. Well, my last question for you in this 3-pack, sticking with the music theme, for years you were in Young Dubliners and so much success in that band. Right now, if you had the opportunity to play guitar in the band of your choice, some modern band that you have a lot of respect for, you love, is there anybody out there that you would love to play with?
Like I've got Sirius Radio. I just bought a new car at the start of the year, and it came with a Sirius Radio package, so I'm driving around listening to that. And it's got a Fish channel, and I'll tell you what, I've never really been a huge Fish fan,
Okay.
but holy smokes, driving around, because they're playing a lot of live tapes all the time,
Uh-huh.
and it's like, no wonder they call them a jam band, because these guys jam. I mean, you're just kind of going, whoa, this is pretty intense. So I can enjoy myself in an outfit like that for sure.
Okay. That sounds
yeah.
good. Well, your style, the way you play, and I imagine Fish being able to be surrounded by so many other great musicians in one band that just jam. I imagine their live shows are pretty fun experience.
I'm sure they are. Yeah, I saw them, but it was in the 90s. But
Okay.
I think something else that's kind of cool about them is they cover, or even some of their originals are a bit more Americana, and that's really a style of music I've always gravitated toward.
Yeah.
So I mean, I could also see myself playing with like Dawes and enjoying it. They're a cool band, or maybe Chris Robinson Brotherhood, or Tedeschi Martin and Wood, or something like that. I could go on.
Sure. Those are some heavy hitter professional bands right there that are fun to listen to, for sure.
Big time.
Well, thanks for indulging in the 3-pack of questions there. So,
It was fun.
well, that was fun. I should have figured the surf thing because you grew up in Orange County and close to the beach, so that would be a pull for you.
Oh yeah, it was definitely in the culture was all around me.
Yes, for sure. Kind of going back to a little bit of our earlier stuff, live music right now. Where do you see live musicians that make their living that way? How do you see that playing out potentially in the next year to year and a half? I know you're still close with some of the members of Young Dubliners and other artists that play all the time. What are you hearing from them about their concerns and about their hopes for the live music future?
Oh man, yeah, it's pretty serious because a lot of venues have not been able to survive, or are not going to be able to survive. The public has been really great about recognizing, supporting this art form,
Yeah.
and so there's been a lot of, you've heard about a lot of maybe some GoFundMe's for certain small venues, or other crowdsourcing, and I got to say, like as far as government assistance, it was very, you know, I thought that was a nice move to approve the CARES Act. I
Hmm.
mean, don't want to go deep into
Sure.
politics here, but just to throw out a positive spin on that,
Sure. Yeah.
because it did help a lot of
A lot of
people,
musicians.
or
Yeah.
or is helping, even if it is a stopgap. I mean, better than nothing. But yeah, it's sad because it's going to, we're going to lose some venues. There's going to be some artists that are going to have to temporarily, if anything, throw in the towel for a while. Um, uh, Hopefully this will, I don't want to say the cream rises to the top. I've never been a huge fan of that phrase anyway, but hopefully, it people will recognize, artists, audiences will recognize the need, and the need for each other to
Hmm.
experience this together, and so there will be some fervor to work on reestablishing the world of
Yeah.
live arts, live performance. That's where I see it going. I mean, as far as talking about nuts and bolts, I think the streaming platform,
Yeah.
this is kind of interesting. It's forcing the future upon us, and it's too bad that we can't magically speed up electrons, because like one challenge I have in my teaching practice, and everything is online now, just like what we're doing here, is you can't play together. There's always that lag. So, like if you had your guitar and I had my guitar, we started 1, 2, 3, go, boom, and I'm going here and you're going boom, boom,
Yep.
boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom.
My bandmates might say that's like what it's playing with me in general. But no,
Yeah, yeah.
I definitely understand that. It's the internet's not. There's a lag. It's not perfect, and for musicians, and for practice, and for it's everything to be on the same time.
But everybody's got smart TVs, and I think, um, as things as become more safe, where it becomes more prudent for more people to be together, and I'm talking about working in a small facility, like a home production, or a small studio, not a big studio where people can actually space out,
Yeah,
until we have a vaccine. Um, I think that as things become more prudent for people to get together, that then the production value of shows that are streaming online, whether
uh
they're
huh,
pre-recorded or going out live, I think the quality will increase, and that will entice people to continue to interact with it more.
sure.
Um, but of course, it's missing that social element. I mean, I play trivia with the team about once every other week, and they have a chat box, as you're playing the trivia game, and
Yep.
it's just not quite the same. But
No.
yeah, so you know, I think to round up the answer, kind of circling back to the idea of fervor, I think when this pandemic is over, that it's going to be amazing. It could be like the summer of love again, or something,
Right.
like wow. That's also provided that we work out our social ills too,
Sure.
on a few different fronts, and
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's like we've mentioned a few times in this interview about just the complex nature we find ourselves in right now of a pandemic and being, for the last few months being quarantined, but then also seeing the social unrest and unlike any time, and I know for sure in my life, but I know many people have said, ever, having both these things go on at once. And so we hope for the best once it's all over, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
believe it will be. I
Yeah,
think, better days will come. It's just, everybody needs to keep their eye on the prize.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of the future, what what are some things that you've got coming up or that you can foresee in your future that excites you, either with your business or with music in general or with writing, whatever it is? Are there some things that you're looking forward to, say, in the next 6 to 12 months coming up for you?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, definitely the music school is exciting. Every week I'm trying to wrap my head around some sort of a new marketing opportunity or concept or activity. I'm also, continuing my education. I just took some CEs in Suzuki Method earlier this week. Some classes. I Yeah, and I'm starting to get a few more phone calls. So, I'm
Great.
excited that I'm looking forward to um, regrouping, continuing to develop the online business. Um, that, who knows, as far as a small business goes, I think that takes me out of something I was feeling as far as if you're just, look, my dad was a barber, okay, and he had a great barber shop he owned and operated in Long Beach. And, it's like your market is your neighborhood when you're that business, you're that service.
Hmm.
And that's what I was feeling at first. Once the smoke cleared of like, whoa, I quit my band, I started a music school.
Yeah.
Now what? And it's like, oh, okay. So really, I'm dependent on the local community, for lack of a better word, dependent. But now the possibility of breaking out of being just regional is there. And
Sure.
so I'm excited about continuing this development of the brand and the content to perhaps starting to not only have a music learning method that you come to in person, but perhaps something that streams live and or is something that you can engage with on your own time.
Okay.
So,
Good. Yeah.
uh,
Well, we'll look forward to seeing that. I mean, I think this pandemic has allowed so, us to get different skills to bring to our businesses. And like you mentioned, the world is your neighborhood now, with
yeah,
online and what you can bring to people. So,
certainly. It certainly is. And I'm still producing. I'm working on recording and producing some music now with my friend and singer-songwriter Jason Witten. We've worked together for years. Um, I helped produce a track for another artist, Holly Freeling. She's a kind of an electronic artist, but she was tasked with producing a goth song, for a
fun.
possible TV placement. And so I helped her arrange and produce that song. And so I've got irons in the fire as far as music production still. And,
Great.
I'd like to, we have to do it all remote right now, but that's okay. Everybody's got their own gear at home and,
Right.
can do it. So it's fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask you these last two questions. I asked you them last time. I asked every guest these last two kind of wrap up questions. And so we'll see if your answers have changed from 2 years ago with these last couple of questions. The first one is, what's been the best investment that you've made in your career?
The best investment was continuing education, training and retraining. There's free sources out there. There are sources where you don't necessarily have to engage with a 4-year or even a 2-year program, although that would be, I would gladly welcome that into my life. It's just, like your parents tell you, the older you get, it's harder to go back to school.
Yeah.
but I may well find myself going down that path someday, if I can manage the time.
Sure.
But training, continuing to learn my instrument. I've taken classical guitar lessons with a private teacher, which it's something I didn't play before, So investment in learning, investment in training, I think is the most, even investment in business, and learning how to administer yourself.
Yeah.
It's significant.
For sure. I love that, especially because you're in the industry now of educating others. So obviously, the more you educate yourself, the more you're able to continue to pass on to your students and to other people. So
it's crucial. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Last one as we start wrapping up here is what brings you the most joy in what you do now?
Wow. Well, truthfully, it's an easy answer. I like giving a good lesson. I really do. I like making people think and laugh and feel like they've, continued, to understand this thing called music a little bit more each time that they come to see me, and each time that they come to see me, the next time I get to see a little bit more about this thing called music from them as well, through their eyes and their experience. So that brings me a lot of joy, connecting with people.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of the Beautiful Work Podcast. Please make sure to check out more about Bob and his business, Superpowers Music Academy, at superpowersmusic.com. And as always, whatever you're doing, wherever you are, keep making that beautiful work. We'll see you next time.